Okay, welcome. It is Wednesday morning. This is Zoom with the principal. My name's Jenny Davis. Let me start sharing my screen. Hopefully I've got the right thing showing. Yeah, I do. So I have a presentation today. And what we're going to talk about is what's normal teenage behavior and what's not. And you see, I have normal in quotes there because normal is relative. Um, and before I actually really get started, um, just know that as always, you can raise your hand if you've got a comment. You can put a comment in the chat, whatever you want to do. What I'm going to be doing in this presentation is we're going to talk about a variety of topics that teenagers and parents of teenagers deal with and struggle with. And we're going to talk about what's normal, again, in quotations, and what's maybe a little bit more worrisome. So if there's been anything that you've been wondering about and worrying about with your child, hopefully we will cover it today, because we're going to talk about a wide variety of topics. I need to get you guys out of my so normal, definition of normal is conforming to a standard, usual, typical, expected. So realize every teenager is different. They're all humans. They all have their own personalities and their own quirks. And so everybody's different, but there is what's like considered typical teenage behavior. And a lot of us as parents, when we were in high school, what was normal for us may not necessarily be what's going on with our teenagers. So I'm coming at this, and I came up with this topic. I didn't write this presentation, and this was written by one of our social workers last year. But where where this is coming from with this is I've had throughout my career, because I've worked with teenagers for a long time, well over 20 years now. I know what tends to be typical with behavior. I actually have a lot of friends that don't work in education. They'll ask me like, is this normal? Is this, what is this stuff that you deal with your school and like the kids you work with? And so that's where this is coming from. One thing that we have to remember with our teenagers now, they have experiences that we never had as teenagers, COVID-19 and like living through a pandemic and like having that, especially our teenagers now where they did that, like our teenagers now that are in high school, they were in middle school. Most of them were in middle school. Our seniors were freshmen that year, distance learning year. But most of our kids now here at school went through middle school, and middle school is a very transformative time. And so definitely, we'll see with this generation and the impact that this has, but my guess is it's going to have like a really long lasting impact. And always remember, like kind of with everything, different teenagers have different personalities. So when I talk about normal teenage behavior, you may be thinking, oh, my teen doesn't act like that. That doesn't necessarily mean there's something wrong with your teen. Okay, we'll talk about what's worrisome behavior, but if your teen doesn't necessarily do all this stuff, that's okay. So I don't want you to start panicking. All right, let's go on. So before we get started in different topics, so this is Eric Erickson is an educational psychologist, and he is somebody that came up with this, it's the stages of psychosocial development, and throughout childhood, what's normal and what's not. So you see here, and then where we are down here is, kind of like in this age, so things that tend to be typical with our, adolescence, identity versus, sorry, I was like pointing over here, but we're over here. Identity versus role confusion, where their teenagers are really learning about themselves. And sometimes that's a really confusing time. Especially I think as, what we project to teenagers. This right now, they're meeting with their counselors to talk about their classes that they want to take next year. And we just assume that they know like what they want to do with their life. I feel like a lot of times when we talk to teens, like, oh, you know what you want to do, and a lot of them don't, and that's okay. So it's really normal for them to be confused, and not have a life plan yet. So things that they may be asking themselves right now: who am I? What career do I want? What do I want to believe in? How should I dress today? Who do I want to hang out with? Like, what type of friends do I have? Like, do I want to go with this group? Do I want to do this? This is all really, really normal. And even their teenagers that seem like they have it all together are probably asking themselves these questions, inside. So what's interesting about teenagers is some of them are very internal with this, and some of them are very like external, where they are like maybe talking to you or talking to their friends, or maybe they're talking to a teacher about this. But all of them are probably asking themselves questions like this. Okay. All right. So our first topic that I want to address is a big one. This is sleep. And I've got some quotes here from psychologists. Is teenagers, one thing that we have to realize as parents is teenagers have a very different biological clock compared to children and adults. So you probably have noticed your teenager having very different sleep hours than they may have had like just like a year ago or 2 years ago. My son is 14 years old. He's a freshman in high school, and that's definitely something I've noticed with him. Like when he was a preteen and a child, he had fairly typical sleep hours, and now like he will easily sleep to like 3 o'clock in the afternoon if we let him. Like his clock is completely like, we have to actually really monitor his sleep, because he is somebody that like wants to stay up all night and sleep all day. And obviously that's not the way the world works. And so we really have to monitor him and like kind of like make him go to bed sometimes. And I feel like every time we have any sort of vacation from school, my husband and I have to like, we'll like let off we'll like give him some freedom and let him do what he wants, and we'll let him stay up all night and then he sleeps all day and we don't worry about it. But then we have to like 4 days before school starts, start resetting his clock. And like, this is like we talk about, oh, we have to reset Nathan. And it's something that we have to deal with. And you guys probably, I would assume that a lot of your teenagers have the same thing. So potentially concerning behavior with sleep, though, is if they are routinely sleeping all day, isolating themselves from friends, repeatedly failing to get up for school, struggling, or if they are not being able to sleep at all. If you see that they're needing more than 11 hours a night, 11 hours a night sounds like a lot. Like I can't even imagine getting 11 hours of sleep a night, but that's not outside of the norm for the teenage sleep needs. But if they're sleeping like 13, 14 hours and continuously not like so if your child like pulled some all-nighters, they had a big test or they had a big project, or there's like events at school, that sort of thing, where they had a series and they're sleep deprived, and then they have a couple of nights where they're like catching up and getting a ton of sleep, that's not worrisome. But once they normal out, and like level out with their sleep, if they're still doing that, then you might see there might be some areas of concern with that. Okay. Moodiness and irritability. It is totally normal for your teenager to be moody, to be frustrated, to be irritable, especially with you, their mom, asking them questions that they don't want to answer. They have a lot of emotions. They have a lot of hormones. They have a lot of new feelings that like I just said, they're questioning things within themselves. That it is totally normal for them to be irritable. And so the best thing for you to do is to be supportive and let them know that if they ever want to talk about anything, you're available. Um, and leave it, don't fight their moodiness. Try not to get frustrated with them about it. This is totally normal behavior. This is one, like when I think about myself as a teenager, this is when I like, oh my gosh, my parents, like, they must have been so irritated with me because I was a very moody teenager. I still can actually be fairly moody. But I was probably very annoying for my parents to live with. Um, so total normal behavior. Where this could be concerning, if the moodiness is constantly escalating, like getting into anger and like angry outbursts type things, where they can't seem to be able to cope with like what seems like a normal situation without flying off the handle, especially if they're starting to respond with violence, if they're hitting, if they're throwing things, that sort of thing. Those are red flags and you shouldn't ignore it. Like if you feel like there's an anger management issue going on, or they can't manage their emotions, then that's something that you probably want to address. You don't want to ignore that, because that can be very concerning. All right, grades. It is totally normal for your teenager to not want to do their homework and to not want to do their schoolwork. Nobody gets excited about writing a paper. It's also totally normal for them to stress about grades, worry about exams. So if you felt at the end of the semester they were super stressed out because they had finals or final projects and everything like that, that's normal. It is normal for them to be stressed out. High school, it's a big deal. Their grades determine, the type of college they're going to get into. They feel that pressure. That is totally normal. However, if they are exhibiting like true anxiety regarding schoolwork, meaning they can't get themselves to actually do their schoolwork, um, even though they're worried about their grades, but they just can't do it because they've just got this mental block, especially kids that really struggle with perfectionism. Sometimes they can't get themselves started and they end up not doing anything at all. If they're having a hard time sleeping because they're thinking too much about schoolwork. And I'm talking about not like last month when we were going into finals, where that's a normal time, but like right now, this is not, we're halfway through the grading period, it's the start of a new semester. They shouldn't be that stressed about schoolwork right now at this moment. But if you were seeing that like they haven't come down from that stress, if they are unable to regulate their emotions about school, like you see them getting angry or like crying or like all of those things where they just seem like they can't, like in a normal time right now, like right now is a perfect example. If they are still super stressed about school and about their grades, you might be a little bit more concerned. Another thing to watch out for, because this can be a warning sign of some other issues, if you're seeing a sudden fluctuation about grades, with grades, they were chugging along, doing okay in school. Maybe they were getting some A's, they're getting some B's, but they were doing, fine. And all of a sudden you see a big drop in their grades because they aren't turning any work. That is the worrisome sign. That's like, when you talk to doctors, like that's one of the things they will ask, like, is there sudden changes? A lot, like actually with all of these topics that we're going to talk about, anything that's a sudden change is a red flag to watch out for. That doesn't necessarily mean like, oh no, like something terrible is happening, but it's definitely something to like perk your ears up and pay attention to. Um, okay. If they don't, and along with those things, like if they're not caring about their grades at all, they just don't care, especially if they used to care and now they don't care a lot. If they're missing a large number of assignments, but they used to do their work, that might be something worrisome. I mean, in general, though, if you have a student that doesn't care about school, doesn't ever turn in any work. That's something, and you haven't talked to us as a school about that, you probably want to talk, like there's something going on. Maybe there's a learning disability, maybe like we need to figure out what's going on. Because missing an assignment here or there isn't a big deal. But when they're consistently doing that, yeah, it's a big deal. It's something that we need to talk about. Okay. Um, by the way, if you guys are putting comments in the chat, I can't see them right now, but once we finish this, I will address all of them. So if you're concerned that I'm not addressing anything in the chat, ooh, I went too fast. Okay, so motivation. I'm sure you guys have heard the term lazy teenagers. It's easy to assume that they would prefer to do nothing but sleep in, play video games, and rely on their parents for all of their needs. Actually, honestly, that kind of sounds nice. If I could just lay around and like do nothing and like sleep in all day and have somebody like take care of me, that sounds great. I think all of us, that sounds awesome. But that's not really true. Like it'd be awesome for a week, but I don't think anybody really wants that forever. So one thing to keep in mind, and this is true for all of us, if we didn't choose an activity to do for ourselves, it's normal not to be all that excited about it. And if we think about our teenagers' life, they don't have a lot of choice in what they get to do. I mean, they have to go to school. Maybe that's not something they really are into or really want to do. So it's normal for them not to be excited about it. If they didn't have a lot of choice in the classes they have to take, especially if they've screwed some things up and they have to repeat some classes. And so, they don't get to take classes that interest them. It's normal that they aren't going to be that motivated with that. Potentially concerning behavior is when a lack of motivation goes beyond preferred activities. So if they don't like math and they're not motivated to do math, that's normal. But if they are really let's take video games. There's a lot of teenagers play video games. If that's something that they super love, and then all of a sudden you're seeing that they're not wanting to do that, and they're not motivated to play their video games, that may be something to be concerned about. If they're not motivated to shower and take care of like their personal hygiene, and you're noticing that is definitely problematic and something to pay attention to. So motivation is something that like it depends on, it's very situational. And so I guess my point is it's totally normal for them not to be motivated to do certain things. If they're not motivated to take out the trash and they're fighting you on taking out the trash, that's normal. But if they're not motivated to, do something that you think that they would like normally would love to do, then that's, something you need to keep an eye on. Withdrawal and isolation. So typical teenage behavior, spending additional time in their room and closing the door and wanting privacy. That's totally normal. And one thing to keep in mind, especially with phones and social media, they may not actually be by themselves. Totally normal for them to give you one-word answers. If my son says a whole sentence to me, I feel like I've won the lottery. And it's also totally normal that they may engage with, it seems like everybody except for you, where like you may have a cousin or an aunt or something like that, or a family friend, and your teenager totally talks to that person. With my daughter, that was my friend Jill, who's a very good friend of mine. But when she would come in town, she lives across the country, but when she could come visit, my daughter would like open up to her and tell her all sorts of things. And then Jill would tell me like, oh, Hannah told me this, this, and this. I'm like, wow, Hannah didn't tell me all that. That's totally normal. Them wanting to do things independently. Like if you go on a family vacation and they don't want to do like stuff with the family and they kind of want to go off and do their own thing, that's totally normal. That this is, teenage years is when they want to exert their own independence and they want to start kind of branching out and doing things on their own. That is very, very normal and like healthy teenage behavior, actually. Where you might be concerned is with you if you see them withdrawing from their friends. Like I mentioned in the previous slide, like if they're withdrawing from preferred activities, that can be something that could be a potential sign of something more concerning. All right, defiance. Some defiance is normal and healthy. And this goes with like them trying to exert their independence. So if they feel like you as the parent are trying to like lay down the law and like control their behavior, it's very normal for them to push back against that. If you set a curfew, they may, push back against and start coming home a little bit later. I used to do that as a teenager. That was my big thing. My mom would set a curfew and then I would come home like a half hour later. And so that's normal. Wanting to push back, and push against rules, it's normal. When you want to be more concerned is if your teen starts to exhibiting like extreme rebellious behavior, they're breaking the law, they're getting in trouble at school constantly, like Mr. Corbett and the advisors are calling you all the time, then that's more concerning. I think, if they're pushing back against your, the chores you're set in the household rules, that's annoying for you as a parent and it's not great and you don't want to I'm not saying let them walk all over you. That's something that you want to deal with as a parent, but it's not necessarily concerning behavior. And so this last line on here where it says if their defiance is threatening to impact their future, then it's time to seek outside help. Like they got arrested, they're getting suspended from school, like that sort of thing. That's when I would say that you might want to be a little bit more concerned. Okay. Going into this, extreme rebellious behavior, let's talk about alcohol use and other types of experimentation. This is something that as a parent, we don't like this. It's not something that we probably want to encourage with our teenagers, but it is normal. Most teens will be in the position to at least experiment with alcohol, meaning they've been exposed to it prior to their 21st birthday. The same can be said for marijuana. And actually, in my experience, I would say teens today, marijuana is probably more likely than alcohol. That just seems to be the trend that we see at school, that marijuana is much more prevalent than alcohol is. So this, just know that they're going to be exposed to this. So that's why, when and I really encourage you to talk to your teens and talk to them about things like peer pressure, talk to them about the dangers of drugs and alcohol, so that and when you have these conversations, try to be free from judgment with them. Because if you come on so strong, like you better never ever do that, like you're gonna be in so much trouble if you do that, they're never gonna come to you if something happens because they're gonna be afraid of getting in trouble. So you want to present like, hey, I'm not gonna like it, but I want you to be able to talk to me. You want to like let them know what's accepted behavior and what's not, but do it in a gentle way so that they will come to you. So potentially concerning behavior. Some experimentation may be normal. If your child, experiments with marijuana, if they experiment with drinking, I don't think you need to panic. If they're doing it all the time, though, you find out that they're binge drinking, they're turning to drugs and alcohol with like a frequency, like it's happening more than just a couple of times in high school, but it's happening every weekend. Or they're doing it to self-treat themselves with if they're experiencing anxiety and depression and they're doing it to self-treat, then that's where you probably maybe need to be a little bit more concerned. Okay. Lying or withholding information. It's not uncommon for teens to be secretive and to want some privacy. They're not going to tell you about everything that's going on in their lives. That's normal. That's part of that exerted dependence where they are, um, like setting their own boundaries and like they it's normal for them not to want to share so much. So so like I said, they may not tell you everything. That's totally normal. It becomes a red flag when it develops into pathological lying. Like they're lying all the time. They if they're lying to hide risky behavior, um, if they are that sort of thing. If you say, hey, did you do that assignment? And they want to get you off their back and they're like, yeah, I did it. And it may be that they just haven't done it yet, but they intend to do it in a little bit, but they just want you to stop pestering them. So they may be like, yeah, that's normal. But if you find that you're constantly catching them in lies, and they're lying to hide things, like they're lying about what they're doing on the weekends and like that sort of thing and who they're hanging out with, and it's kind of seems to be like a constant thing, that would be a little bit more worrisome. Sean, you raised your hand.
Yeah, thank you. So all these topics are top of mind and relevant in my world right now. The lying is something that is ultra sensitive for me right now.
Yeah.
And my thing with lying is I've always taught her not to lie. A lie is hard to keep up with. You got to keep track of what you told who and what you told, to every person you lied to. But my concern is the little lies.
Yeah.
The little lies can turn into the big lies. Or if you're lying about the little things, who's to say what you're lying, what else you would lie about if you lie about the little things? So I guess the question is, at what point do you say, okay, enough with these little lies, or start to feel some concern?
I think that's a very good point. And so um and I'm right there with you, Sean. I know God, I remember 6 years ago when my daughter was, I think, a sophomore in high school. It was my first year as principal. And this is when we used to do these weekly meetings and we used to do them in person. And I remember telling the parents of Piedmont Hills, like, I have a great relationship with my daughter. She tells me everything. And then I found out that she'd been lying to me about a lot of stuff. And it blew my world apart. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it was terrible. And like the
Hurt.
trust and
Yes.
it hurt a lot because I thought we had such a close relationship. Um, what and Sean, I'm just telling you, like, what ended up helping us and repaired our relationship, it was we did do family therapy. And like this was one of the topics that we like addressed in family therapy, and like trust and lying. And so I don't know if you want to go into therapy, but like I would start having conversations about trust and what trust means, and how the little lying is breaking your trust. And I would open it up to a two-way street. Like, what do you need to do so that your child trusts you?
Mhm.
And so like if I'm sorry, do you have a daughter, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So if your daughter, is lying to like, I like kind of flip that, like, are you not trusting me that you feel like you can't tell me the truth? And see what goes with that. Virginia, do you have any suggestions?
Yeah, I actually wanted to share just how I handle that situation. So from a young age, I've always been very open with the boys, and I explained to them that the lies leads to a bigger issue, which is trust. And once they lose that trust, it's really hard for me to help them, back them up, and all that stuff. So I'll go into details and I'll kind of tell them like you it's not it's okay to like keep things from me if you feel uncomfortable about it, but you can't really lie to me or try to make another story up. So with my oldest, he will not like lie. He's come to a point where he'll get himself in trouble because he's realized that telling the truth is better than lying. But I always tell them like if you tell me the truth, at least I'll be able to assist you. If I get a phone call, say if an accident were to happen, at least I know where you were at or what you were doing or what you were up to. Or say you want to experiment, let me know so that I know that I can be aware that if something were to go wrong or something, I'm aware. Can you imagine how, as a parent, getting a phone call and not knowing what's going on, and being in the complete dark? And he's really understood that. So like now, if he does go to have to talk to an admin or something, he'll immediately call me and be like, Mom, I just want to let you know I had to go and talk to so and so, this is going on. I say, thanks, son. Thanks for letting me know. So when they contact me, I'm aware of it. I got your back. Will do what I do. And so that's kind of, I think, really built trust. And, he can trust me and depend on me, and kind of, I'm sure he doesn't tell me everything, but enough for me to, for us to have that relationship. So I think just really communicating and explaining. Also, another thing that I've learned, because I do study behavior, like you can't really just tell your kids, don't do that. I just don't want you to do that. Don't do it. Like, explain to them why you don't want them to do that, or what may happen, or, stuff like that. Just give them a little more understanding as to why you're saying not to do something or to do something. Just my opinion. Hope that helps,
Yeah.
Sean.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, ladies.
Um, I lied. I can't see the chat because there's a comment in the chat talking about lying. I lied to you guys. I said I couldn't see the chat and I did. So my north is to look at how I'm treating my child. If I'm not 100% honest all the time, sometimes you don't want to burden them with stuff due to age and other reasons. And I understand if at a time they held back. I cannot say that I've never lied. So holding our kids to something that I cannot promise is a tall task. And I think that's a really, thank you for commenting that, because I think I think it's best to look at like why your child is lying to you. It's because they don't want to, probably because they don't want you to be disappointed in them. And so I think like look at the motivation, and I think that having those honest conversations with your child about, hey, you're going to screw up sometimes and that's okay. We learn from that, but I'm still going to love you. And even if you do something that I'm not going to like, it's going to be okay. And sharing that, because like I think that, unless your child is just like, on the spectrum and they're pathological and like, they've got like something crazy going on with them, they're lying to protect you. And so think about that, um, like, again, most of our teenagers, like that's where this, and like, when I say most, I mean 99.9% of them, you know, um, this, yeah. So I think that this is one area that I think having real conversations with your child about how the lying makes you feel is a great like place to like start and having a really open conversation. Go ahead, Sean. You put your hand back up.
This is a hot topic for me. I think the main other issue is we want to prevent something bigger from happening. And, my philosophy is if you lie, you steal. If you steal, you lie. And those are two bad things. So anyway, I'll go on mute now. Thank you.
No, and I think that that's, and I think, if this is, and I think with any of these areas, if it is a really sensitive topic to you, I think that that's a conversation that you need to have with your child. Like, let's take the slide a couple slides ago, like alcohol. For some families, that may not be something that's so worrisome. I'm going to be completely honest. In my household, that was not something I worried about. I mean, did I drink as a teenager? Yes, I did. It wasn't something that I've been I haven't been really sensitive to as a parent, and it's not something that's worried me as much. Other things worry me more. That's kind of something like, and my personal like spectrum of what freaks me out as a parent, that's lower. other families and other parents, that's going to be way higher. Maybe they have, you know, a history of alcoholism themselves, or like in their immediate family, and it's something that's it's really, really concerning with. And so I think talking to your teenager about all the different things that teenagers may come across and like things that they may do, what are something that's super sensitive to you? And just so they know, like, hey, this is an area that your friends' parents may not be freaking out about, but this is something that I'm going to freak out about. And so just so they know and they understand that. Virginia, your hand's up.
Yeah, so coming back to drugs and alcohol, like you said, I know as a teenager, we were all teenagers, that we're gonna try, we're gonna experiment. So what I try to explain to my kids is, I know you're gonna try, it's okay, but what I worry about is, are you gonna have an allergic reaction? Is it gonna be laced with something? Like, I try to make other things to let them understand, like, that's why I need to know if you react differently to a drug, that somebody else takes it completely normal. I need to know, because if I have to take you to the hospital, I'll be like, yeah, I know he, tried weed, but maybe he had an allergic reaction to it, or really bad reaction to it, or he got really paranoid, or whatever the case may be. I said, so that's why you got to understand, as a mother, I worry about you, other things, not just that you're trying it. So that also seems to help with getting him to understand that there's other reasons. I'm not just saying don't do it.
Yeah, no, and so I think it's really interesting, like what you're saying, and like that was something that like you're particularly sensitive about. That's something like honestly never really occurred to me. My thing with like drugs and alcohol, because when I was I graduated from high school in 1992, and like there were like drinking and driving, and I had, you know, people that I knew that died from drinking and driving in high school. And so that is something that is super sensitive to me. So that was my, like, you know, with my teenagers, it's okay if you experiment, but you better not get into a car. You call us. I don't care where you are. If you need a ride, you do not get into the car. Because that is something that's super sensitive to me. So we all have our things. And so I think just being honest with your teenagers about this is something that I am like, this is my thing. This is my hill that I'm going to die on. And they need to know that. And so that kind of like, so, you know, and I think having that honest conversation about you want independence and you want me to like respect your boundaries. I need you to respect my boundaries also. I think those are really important conversations to have. Okay, let's talk about sex and dating. We talked about this a little bit last week. So this is something like, this is normal behavior. They are going to, as teenagers, start, you know, experimenting and playing around with, you know, sex and like thoughts of sex and all of that stuff. This is where it really is important for you to have an open conversation with them so that if problematic things come up, they can come to you about that. If they are, you know, doing things, you know, or in relationships that aren't healthy, you want them to be able to come to you. And talking to them, you know, like you see all these like stories now of people that are addicted to pornography and like things like that. Like that stuff that's worrisome. You know, and so, you know, having those conversations about consent and what's like healthy relationships and what's not, it's really important. This is a conversation like so, you know, we do every 6 weeks, we do school-wide lessons. We're actually doing one next week. It's about goal setting. And so typically I just send out the presentation to you guys. And I will for this next one, which is about, you know, setting goals. I'll just send that out to you guys so you as parents can see it. The one that we're doing in the 5th grading period is about healthy relationships. And that one I'm actually going to give you guys on one of our Wednesday morning sessions. I'm going to give you the presentation. Like we will talk about it the same way the kids get it. Because it's a really, really important topic. Okay, so these are some just things to kind of keep in mind, you know, just kind of sum up things that, you know, keep an eye on, potential red flags. If you see them just giving up and like complete loss of motivation in all things, red flag. Sleeping too much or too little, and not just like for brief periods, but kind of a constant that's what's happening. Crying and sadness, that may be normal, like something like happened that caused crying, but they seem like they're doing it for no reason and a lot. That's something that's worrisome. If you see them having a lot of negative self-talk where they're very critical of themselves, like, oh, I'm so stupid, or I'm ugly, or think like that's, that's worrisome. That's something you want to address. If they're always feeling sick so that they don't have to come to school, that's something to keep an eye on. Changes in appetite, something to keep an eye on. If they are unnaturally worried about their safety, like actually, like I would say, like teens worrying about their safety is not something that teens typically do. Teens tend to think they're invincible. We as parents tend to worry more about their safety than they do. So that's something that is a little bit concerning. Intolerance of uncertainty, like if they are super hard on themselves, that things aren't, that they don't know what they want to do, and they don't, they're questioning things and they can't handle that. That's it's normal for them to be questioning things and for things to be like uncertain, and like, so if they are having a hard time with that, that's something to be concerned about. Anger outbursts, especially if they are getting violent, that's definitely something to keep an eye on and to address. Withdrawing from activities they used to enjoy. Expressing worries, complaining if it's excessive. It's like constantly like they don't seem to like be able to talk about anything else. That's can be worrisome. Excessive hostility or avoidance towards family. So like I talked about, it's normal for them not to want to hang out with you, but if they are like angry about it and just they will never hang out with you, they absolutely refuse. That's that's getting into like, that's worrisome. Um, Excessively fidgety, like they can't sit still, like they can't relax. And if they have a constant need for reassurance. And again, a lot of these things, like if it just happens once or twice, that's not weird. But if it's like a constant thing that you're seeing, that can be something that you need to address. So what's not helpful for us to do as a parent? It is not helpful to remove all stressors and to coddle them. Them experiencing stress is good. It's normal. They need to learn how to cope with stress. As adults, we have stress in our lives. So if they have a difficult teacher, that they're stressed out about that class, trying to get them out of the class, that's not necessarily a good thing to do. We can't remove all of the stressors and just like, show, saran wrap or like bubble wrap their lives. We can't do that. Assume that if they are anxious about something that they're manipulating you. Anxiety is a real thing. Getting angry with them, is not helpful. And I totally, like, as a parent, like sometimes you're super frustrated. And so having like within like coping mechanisms within ourselves that like maybe we find ourselves getting angry, we go for a short walk around the block, count to 10. We do things with ourselves to prevent us from snapping and getting angry with them. Telling others without their permission. I was definitely guilty of this, and my daughter called me on it and she was super hurt. And so now like stuff that I talk about with my kids, I do have their permission. I do ask them if I can share. Because they don't want you sharing their business with your friends. And so be careful about that. One-upping them, where if they had a bad day and you say, well, my day was worse because this happened to me, and minimizing their feelings, reinforcing their so minimizing, but then also reinforcing their feelings. That's not helpful either. Telling them to calm down is never You can just imagine like times that you're like the most angry and frustrated, and if somebody told you to calm down, that it's not a helpful thing to say. Telling them that it's all in their heads, telling them to stop feeling sorry for themselves, telling them not to worry, that you'll be fine. All this that we do as parents try to reassure them, but it's not actually helpful. Saying we give you everything you need, what can you be stressed about? People have it way worse than you do. Stop thinking about it. What could you possibly have to worry about? This is all like stuff that just dismisses how they're feeling. So, why is this not helpful? So, oh no, sorry. Why is not helpful? So if they tell you this is how I'm feeling, they are super stressed about school right now, and you ask them why, which tends to be the like obviously like if they're super, and guys, I'm so guilty of this myself. I need to like memorize this slide. My son last week, he didn't want to go to school one day, and I'm like, why? What's going on? Why? And if they have no answer, that tends to make them more anxious, and because a lot of times there is no why. They feel like they may be disappointing you. They don't want to burden you. They feel like something must be wrong with them. So having that, this is if Yvonne was here, this is her like famous like mantra, like she's, she loves saying this. Do you want me to listen, to give you advice, or be upset with you? And so just saying, like, what do you need from me right now? Do you want to talk about this? Do you want me to listen? Do you actually want advice right now? Do you just want me to be like, sit here and like be mad and upset about at the world with you? And I'll like share that with you. That's probably a better way to come at this, to see what's going on with your teenager. How we can help them. Model healthy coping strategies ourselves. So like I just, said, if you find yourself getting angry, you go on a walk, you go, you count to 10, like, and they see you doing this, like you're modeling healthy coping strategies. That's a great thing to do. Modeling your own self-care. So all the ways that you do to take care of yourself, which I really hope you are, because it's very important that we as parents are taking care of ourselves. Encourage them and praise them. So when they are doing a great job and you like really like you're like, it can be like small things, but like do remember to encourage and praise them. Push them to avoid avoiding. So if they like, don't let them avoid the hard things. Help them make a plan to deal with the hard things, but don't let them avoid the hard things, because as we all know, life is hard. There are always going to be hard things, and we need to be helping them. Like these teenage years are so important for them to learn how to deal with hard things. Try to understand where they're going through, try to be empathetic, put yourself in their shoes. Don't take it personally if they don't want to talk to you about it. But help them find somebody that they will talk to about it, so that they are talking to somebody. It may not be you. It probably isn't going to be you. And that's okay. But have them have somebody that they can talk to. Monitor their sleep. We have an idea of how much sleep your teenagers are getting. Listen to them, listen, like, and like they can say things in like the slightest, like, just like they give you little clues and like things that they talk about. Try not to demand perfection. Do not demand perfection. Nobody's perfect. Provide healthy food so that they're getting their food from you. There's tons of junk food around, so try to provide them some healthy food. Encourage them to spend time with their friends. This is, I think parents think, oh my gosh, they spend so much time with their friends, but that's good. That's normal teenage stuff. And so that's actually, if they're spending time with their friends, that's healthy, normal teenage behavior. So encourage it. Praise their effort. If you have concerns, talk to their doctor. Your pediatrician is, one of your best areas of support. So if there are things that you were concerned about, definitely talk to their doctor about it. Be open, support, offer to help if they are really struggling with something, offer to get them professional help. And then if they say yes, that they want professional help, follow up on it. Like, don't leave that hanging. I've seen that too many times where, you know, I'll talk to parents that are struggling with their kids and they say, well, yeah, they indicated that maybe they wanted to like get therapy or something, but I haven't had a chance to look into it. If they say they need that, then they really need that. And so don't delay in looking into and finding that. All right, so that is the last slide. Hopefully this was helpful. There are, you know, so many things. Let me stop sharing. I will send out this presentation to you guys so that you can have it, because there was a lot of information on there. And so maybe you want to take your time and read it more slower. Teenagers are difficult. Raising a teenager, I think, is probably like one of the hardest things that we will all do in our lives. It's not easy. And the reason I do these weekly meetings is so that we like form a community of parents, so that we are like can support each other and talk about how, you know, what's, you know, what are we all experiencing. So on that vein, I'm next week we are starting, which I hope you guys have all bought the book. We are going to start a book club, The Emotional Lives of Teenagers. I'm not going to lie, I have only read to page 8. So I am going to be reading in the next week. So what we'll talk about in my newsletter on Sunday, I will talk about, I'll give you the exact page numbers that we'll cover, but basically it's going to be part 1 of the book. And so, and I also have, what I'll do in my newsletter is I'll have some questions that we're going to talk about the book. If you don't have the book and you don't want to read along, but you just want to listen and like, you can still join the Zooms, it's okay. But I hope that you're going to be reading the book. That's what we're going to be doing throughout the month of February. I'm hopeful that this is going to, that we're going to learn a lot. So thank you guys. Thank you. You guys are the greatest. You can get the book on Amazon. If you look on my newsletter, Leah, it's and it's linked on our website. If you look on the newsletter, I have a link on Amazon. But I think other like bookstores have it, but definitely I have the Amazon link on the website. If you don't like to do Amazon, I do everything on Amazon, so, but some people don't like it. Okay, thank you guys and have a wonderful weekend. Stay that we're about to get quite the storm, so hopefully power stays on for all of you. Okay, thank you.
Yes, same. Have a good week. Thank you.
You too. Bye.